Welcome to the Army Birthday Trivia Game. Our contestants today are two podcast hosts you know and love, Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith and SMA Dan Dailey. And our quizmaster today is none other than senior producer LaSharon Duncan. Here's LaSharon. Take it away, LaSharon.
So we have a riveting game of Army Birthday Trivia. Are you ready?
Ready.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. The first person to answer gets the point.
We got to put our hand on the buzzer.
All right, question number 1. Who are the 3 presidents to hold the highest Army rank?
Eisenhower, George Washington, and Eisenhower, Washington, and I'm missing one.
Go ahead, Dan. Answer the third one.
It was during World War II.
Ulysses S. Grant.
Oh, Grant. That's right. U.S. Grant.
It was Grant.
Yeah.
Eisenhower, Washington were right, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did get that correct. So I say we'll give you that one.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
It looks like Dan is in the lead.
All right, question number 2. Here we go. Which battle is considered the first major engagement of the American Revolutionary War?
Lexington and Concord.
Give me another.
Oh, Revolutionary War. Yeah.
Revolutionary War.
Yes.
Goodness gracious. I don't know. Who is it, Les? What is it?
So the answer is the Battle of Bunker Hill.
I wouldn't have got that.
Here's the last one for all the marbles.
All the marbles.
In World War II, which U.S. Army general famously vowed, "I shall return," after being forced to leave the Philippines?
Douglas MacArthur.
There we go! Yay!
And Dan wins.
I'm a history guy.
Thank you all for engaging in this Army Birthday Trivia. And for all those out there, make sure you all know your Army Birthday history out there.
As you probably already know, the Army turns 250 this year. And to celebrate, not only did we put together this little trivia game, but we've brought back one of our most popular guests to help us figure out the ideal birthday cake. Chef Robert Irvine, known for his Food Network shows like Restaurant Impossible, has spent the last 2 decades helping to assist and feed military troops around the world. But in the last 18 months, he's taken a more proactive role to help create a whole new food system for Army installations across the country. He's been working closely with Lieutenant General Chris Mohan, a top logistics officer who currently leads the Army Materiel Command. In today's episode, our hosts sit down with Chef Irvine and General Mohan to talk about their own food experiences, the importance of sitting down in the mess hall with fellow soldiers and officers, and yes, birthday cake. I'm Carrie Viro-Heikis, and this is Army Matters.
General Dynamics Land Systems is at the leading edge of predictive and prognostic maintenance with Vitals. Vitals' AI-powered vehicle intelligence tools increase operational readiness rates by leveraging forward-looking, decision-actionable logistics data. With portions already fielded on Strykers, Vitals is compatible with all Army vehicles.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Army Matters. Yes, that's right. It's your wonderful co-host, the 15th Sergeant of the Army, retired Dan Dailey. And I'm here with my really good friend,
your best buddy, Lieutenant General Leslie Carlton.
That's what the C stands for, Dan.
That's what it
Smith.
stands for?
Yes.
Carlton.
Dan, I know you want to talk about a trivia contest.
You're darn right I do.
Yeah, I know. You want to have something to be proud of again.
Anyway, so what are your plans this year for the 250th birthday, Leslie Carlton Smith?
Thank you, Daniel. Blue Eyes Dailey. Actually, I'm going to start off at Mount Vernon in the morning. I have a speech to do there. Then I'm going to be on the mall. You know, I'm AUSA's senior representative on the mall.
You are. Yeah.
What about you? What are you going to be doing, Dan?
Well, I'm going up to Philadelphia, the birthplace of our nation and our Army.
That's right.
Yeah. We're doing
you got a suite of things that we're going to actually we're sponsoring a lot of things up there with that chapter.
We are.
Right?
Yeah, and the local chapter is too. AUSA is going to put on and host an incredible celebration for 250 years of excellence of the American soldier. But as Les said, the Army is going to host major events here in D.C. at 14 June, and they're going to be on the National Mall. So for our listeners out there, please come out and celebrate. If you're in the Philadelphia or the D.C. area, come show your support for the men and women who have served this country for over 250 years. So Les, what do you think the food's going to be like at your Mount Vernon speech? Are they serving chow out there?
You know, maybe there'll be food of the times. So that would be interesting, won't it? Like mutton.
Mutton? What is mutton?
I don't know. It's lamb.
Oh, is it lamb?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
They must teach that at West Point or those officer schools or something.
You've heard of mutton before. Come on, bro.
Mutton busting. Mutton busting to me is like when kids mutton. I guess, well, that is a sheep, right? Yeah. Well, you're right. Yeah. Sheep, lamb. Is that the same? Mutton? I guess so. You ever seen mutton busting at the fairs?
No, I haven't seen. You mean like steer busting, but it's a sheep.
It's for kids. No, they put them
kids.
on.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Mutton busting.
Yeah. Because they're not big enough to get on a steer yet. Or
on a
cow.
steer yet. Yeah. So, mutton busting.
Well, what are we doing? What are we talking about?
I don't know. We're way off track, but what we are talking about, well, not quite.
We're still talking about food.
We're talking about food.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Army chow.
Yes.
We're talking about dining facilities and how we make them better. And we got two gentlemen that are in the heart of that task.
Well, let's bring them on.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Lieutenant General Chris Mohan and Chef Robert Irvine.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Gents, welcome to Army Matters.
Gentlemen, we're going to get into what you're doing for our great Army today. But, this year is the 250th birthday of the United States Army. Super big deal. We can't wait to celebrate that all throughout the rest of this year. But I got a quick question for you, because we're going to talk a lot about food today. What kind of cake would you bake for the 250th birthday? And we'll start with General Mohan, because I don't want him to have to follow Robert Irvine.
Yeah. No, the question is, can he even cook?
I'm a really good cook, Les.
Okay.
One.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Yep. And two, although sweets are not necessarily my thing, barbecue's my thing.
Nice.
But if it's a cake, old school chocolate with buttercream frosting.
You know
old
what?
School.
I love you even more, man. Chocolate cake?
Yeah.
Nice.
Cake.
Is that your favorite?
It's got to have buttercream frosting on it, though.
Okay.
Buttercream. That's interesting.
Nice.
All right. Let's go over to the chef.
Yeah, what would the chef do?
I'm kind of a
I feel like we're on a
purist. I would go straight back to Martha Washington's cookbook
Oh.
and take it straight out of there. Abigail's Floating Island, there'll be some meringue somewhere, there'll be a sponge, there'll be some kind of cream. But remember this, folks.
Yes.
Back when, the old days, the tomato was a deadly nightshade. They never used tomatoes. They never used certain things. So you've got to stay in the period of 250 years ago, sir.
Okay.
Like we're modernizing, we have to go back in time.
Oh, really?
So we had to use what was native to the land, not imported, or as we say, like the trade spice or the chocolate spice, which moved around the world. They didn't have it then. So it would have been very basic.
So, but his would be considered a bougie cake.
A bougie cake.
Nowadays.
Bougie.
Ours, old
Bougie.
school.
Old school. Okay. Bougie versus old school. All right. We'll take that.
Bougie versus old school. Oh, this is gonna be hard to tame today. I could tell this is gonna be hard to tame today. We're out of control. All right,
we're out of control already.
Gentlemen, both of you have done incredible things throughout your careers, and a lot of it for our soldiers and families. Now, Chef, we had you on before, and you talked about your incredible background and growing up in the Royal Navy, and our other guest, Lieutenant General Mohan. Sir, let's talk about you first. How did you come to the Army? What made you, inspired you to commission?
My dad was in the Marine Corps, and he lived like the American dream. Left his hometown in Vermont right after he graduated from high school because his parents had a job lined up for him in a marble quarry. And he said, hey, I want to do something different. Korean War was going on. So he and two of his best friends went and joined the Marine Corps and left like in 2 days. And then after that, he did 4 years in the Marine Corps, was a non-commissioned officer. But then he went to school on the GI Bill. He bought his first house with a VA loan. And so he kind of lived that American dream. And then when the kids came around, look, there was 4 of us. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a carpenter. And if I wanted to go to college, there was going to have to be, my share. And the North Carolina National Guard is what I did. Only going to stay 3 years. And once it gets in your blood, it gets in your blood. And so here I am.
Can you tell our audience, sir, what do you do today? Where are you at, and what do you do today for our Army?
So I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I am the acting commanding general of the Army Materiel Command. We're the blue-collar workforce of the Army. We fix your tanks. We drive your trucks. We feed at 180 locations around the world, and we do the hard work that needs to be done to make our Army run.
Awesome. So, Chef, I want to throw that same challenge question to you. Now, you've been doing television for, 2 decades, maybe even more, right? So, Dinner Impossible, Restaurant Impossible. What was your biggest challenging restaurant or dinner that you had to do? Well, let's go to the restaurant. I like the restaurant.
Chef, you heard what I said, right? I said Dan Impossible, too.
I don't think look, they're all uniquely challenging, just like creating teams of 17, combat units or whatever. And before, when I was in the military, it was, you do it a certain way because that's the way the military tells you to do it. And it works 95% of the time, but then there's 5% where you go in and you face that person who's not in the military, who doesn't want to listen, and that's the show, right? They want to fight you because they feel that everything's working right. They've the best food, the best environment, the best team, the best this, and they're not open-minded enough to say, hang on a minute, let's look at this. And I had one in Cerritos, California that were $1.1 million in debt. My first walk into the restaurant was the granddaughter. The girl was chewing gum when the guy was trying to pay. And I was just stood there and watched, flabbergasted that she was chewing gum and playing on a phone when somebody was trying to pay a bill. I lambasted her literally. Mother came out all upset, didn't know who I was. Then the grandmother, they were very abusive to me, and that's an understatement. Which you see on the show. And here we are 8 years later, they paid off 1.1 million. They do 3.4 million in revenue. And I think it's based on changes based on fear. Fear of being ousted to the general public on a national TV show in 170 countries. But B, not knowing originally what they started and how they wanted it to eventually show out or put out. And they couldn't do it. And there I am, I'm walking in and I see things in an instant and I look at a profit and loss statement and here's your problem, right? You're the number one problem. You won't change.
My favorite episode is when you took the sledgehammer. The lady, as you described, was not completely digesting your way of thinking. And she had this little separate room that she wanted to keep. And you just destroyed it right in front of her.
Yeah, and my builder wasn't happy. I think the one that really stands out to me is one with Michelle Obama in D.C. when I put the sledgehammer through a gas pipe, a water pipe.
and they were on.
So obviously, you got to create drama, but some of that is not, right? Some of it's like real.
It's all real.
It's all real.
No, I don't know the people. I don't know the circumstances. I choose not to. And by the way, newsflash, we're about to come back with this new show, right? Mm-hmm. You're the first ones to know it. I've only just signed it. But it's real. I choose to be that way so I can react in a real way. I've learned to listen a lot more, although I'm not very patient, which both all of you.
Oh, I'll test for that. Yeah, I'll test for that.
Because I have no patience for wasting time. And if I don't get it right, they lose the restaurant. If I get it right, they either keep the restaurant or they sell it and pay off their debts. One way or the other is a win to me. And I have to fix it. And I take that very seriously.
Now, Chris, in that same vein, You've overseen several difficult operations. Can you tell us about one in particular, Operation Allies Welcome? What was it, and what role did you play?
Yeah, talk about Restaurant Impossible. When the decision was made to withdraw from Afghanistan, and we realized that not only were the travelers going to flow through Ramstein and other overseas locations, but then they were going to end up here in the United States. We rapidly started building camps to put them in. We set up L&Os at each one of the nodes, and we were monitoring the flow of travelers, refugees, by the plane load, and saying, okay, this next plane, because we have built 6 more tents at Fort Bliss, the next plane goes to Fort Bliss, and then the next plane goes to Camp Atterbury. At the same time, we were bringing up feeding capability as well. And it wasn't just normal food. It was all culturally appropriate halal meals. And I would say that's the first one of the first times in CONUS that I saw a to be what could be application of food service, because the normal rules and regulations, because we were in a contingency, didn't apply. And we were able to do a lot of different things that are now baked into the proposal that we're working right now.
That's excellent. So, Chef, talking about meals, you've cooked meals for soldiers all over the world, and I've been there with you with that in Iraq, Afghanistan. What was the very first time that you cooked for U.S. troops?
1996. I came to this country, and it was shortly after that, beginning of 97, was my first, and it was at Walter Reed.
Yeah.
Right? That was my first, and I never forget it because there's a commanding general and sergeant major that met me there. And there was an admiral's galley there, funnily enough. I don't know why, but there was. And I said, there's no food in this galley. And I made it was, can't believe it's butter, rolls, some cheese, some peppers, a plastic knife, something they called meat, but it really was like just stuff. And I made a cheesesteak and give it to some Marines. And they were like, Marines were like, smell it first and then devour it. And that was my first kind of entrance into cooking for the military. Although I was the executive chef at Trump Taj Mahal, we had the largest cook chill facility, meaning we could make our own dressings and soups and sauces and bag them. And the Navy at that point wanted to do that kind of cook chill facility for ships and submarines. They came to look at it. It was not possible because bags break. You can't walk on them like cans. And that was my first introduction really to the U.S. military. And I spent 2 days a week at the White House on the guest chef program teaching the Navy cooks how to cook. That was in end of 96 into 97. And I was always intrigued being a Navy cook myself. Hence the name Cookie. Thank you very much, Dan Dailey.
Hey, Cookie.
That's what he calls me, by the way, every time he sees me. Hey, Cookie. I don't have a name. It's Cookie. I think that was the spur of something really to change my life into travel and giving it to all branches, not just the Army, but all branches of our military that serve. Hence traveling 150 days a year now and really focused on what I've seen and what can be better.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of things about General Mohan, but I've never heard this phrase about that your team members have called you the Ted Lasso of the Army.
Ted Lasso?
Okay, you got to explain to us. Why do they describe you that way, bruh?
Hey, so maybe it's because maybe I'm out of place. I'm a football coach that coaches soccer. Maybe that's what it is, Les.
Oh, you think you're out of place? I don't think so. You're right where you're supposed to be.
But hey, we are awaiting the return of the Ted Lasso show because we love it as a family.
Yeah.
Because it's positive. It's good news.
Yeah.
In today's world, hey, look, we need those kind of stories of people just digging down and getting it done.
Yeah.
General Dynamics Land Systems, Piranha 10x10 AGM self-propelled howitzer has extraordinary shoot-on-the-move capability. With an L-52 gun that can fire 360 degrees, carrying 30 stowed rounds, the Piranha 10x10 AGM is a production-ready capability that is postured to meet the Army's FY 2030 long-range fires requirements.
Hey, did you get your AUSA merch yet? Check out our online selection at shop.ausa.org.
Welcome back to Army Matters. Now let's talk about food. Chef Irvine, let's start with you. When did you formally first get involved in helping the Army reshape its culinary experience?
That's a tough question to answer, Dan, because, I was traveling with Chairman of Joint Chiefs, Joe Dunford, onwards. I remember when we were visiting Poland on a trip, and it was just a little base, and we'd ship in food from Germany. And I remember seeing this bag of what looked like tepid water with some kind of vegetables in it. And I said to the chairman, I'm like, sir, with all due respect, you want these athletes to eat this crap? And he was amazed as much as I was because he hadn't seen it. And I think then my brain started to think about what if we could do this? What if, and you know what it's like, every 4 years there's a change of administration. So when you start getting something going, and you know this, Dan, because we talked about this 1,000 times, when you get something going, it never gets far enough past the goalpost before I have to start again.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction, I suppose. And then I started to travel a lot more and see bases and really start to, and this is something a lot of people don't understand. It's great you see a chef on TV that comes in and says, oh, you should do this. You have to understand the supply chain, the logistics, it's not just changing a recipe card. It's a whole bunch of stuff. And I finally feel, thanks to Chris and his team and the chief, Randy George, that we're starting to get this great momentum of change because we need it. We've got new missiles and new planes and new trains, but we need a leader like Chris. And I'm not sucking up. I mean, a leader like Chris, because he's taken it to a different level now. We're seeing change. We're starting to see change.
That's good. So can you explain to us how Columbia University served as a initial inspiration for what you're trying to do?
So it's about 8 years ago, I went up to Columbia University, and there's a young lady named Vicky, who's the catering and food manager there. They started to change making stations and fresh food. And bear in mind that Columbia has zero refrigeration, right? There's a couple of pull-out refrigerators, but there's no walk-in refrigerations like we have on bases or ships or whatever. So they get deliveries at 2:00 in the morning. They put them away. The cooks come in at 6 and they start to cook. Well, we started to implement this healthy, fresher lifestyle in all of their food. And that was almost 9 years ago. Year one, you have to be part of the food program as a student. After year one, you can go and do whatever you want. You're in the middle of New York City. And yet 5 years later, we have a 95% retention rate of that food program because it is healthy, it's fresh, there's choices. You don't have to eat like a rabbit. They're the same age as our young soldiers from all walks of life. And I wanted to take senior leadership there to show them that, look, we can do the same thing. The Army has some of the best cooks in the world. We just don't have enough of them, right? We don't train them enough because me as a civilian chef, if I go into Columbia University, I get 6 months of training before I can do anything. We've got 8 weeks of training, 4 on equipment for the forward operating field equipment, and then 4 in a kitchen. It's not their fault. They're great at what they do, but if certain things don't show up in in the dining facility, in other words, stores, chicken and things, how do we adapt to that?
Yeah, so I think Columbia is a benchmark of success. I want to go back to when it really was driven home to me how bad we were, and that was at Fort Jackson. When I went down there probably 5 years ago, and I walked into the dining facility, and you have to walk under an arch that says, "Under this arch pass the best soldiers in the world." And then the dining facility was falling apart. The contractor that was running the dining facility was substandard. And so I immediately went to, hey, we're going to get rid of them. And then I started to realize just how hard and how tough the bureaucracy was, because the contractor is a legally blind company working for the state. I'm like, all right, who's in charge? Oh, the actual state is in charge. So why is the state of South Carolina involved in the way that we're feeding our soldiers? And that just uncorked the whole thing. And I have fed soldiers literally all over the world. Why is it easier for me to feed soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan than it is in South Carolina? Soldiers were telling us. We were listening to the soldiers, and they're still telling us, and they're still not happy.
Well, and sir, I want to pull on that thread. Now, what are we doing, and how are we going to get to that end state?
So to start out with, there's some very simple principles. Mm-hmm. Let people who manage and large food service operations and serve people at scale, serve people at scale. So you think about the 184 dining facilities we have around the Army. Under our old concept, that's 184 small restaurants mm-hmm. that are not incentivized to feed more people. They've got to send their soldiers to the field. They've got to have their soldiers do PT. Mm-hmm. And their most important task is to make sure those soldiers can survive in combat. We want them to do that. So our very first premise was, hey, look, let's get the right level of management at our dining facilities. Yeah. And so our new concept basically goes from an individual contract to a larger, broader national contract. Yeah. 5 locations, 5 different states to start out with, so we can benchmark to leverage the buying power, to leverage the professional management of people like Chef, mm-hmm. And so that we have the right kind of skill sets feeding our soldiers.
Well, let me be a little quick, sirs.
Absolutely.
And I believe in what you're doing, Chef. I want to hear your comments next. But how are we going to train our soldiers then? To feed our soldiers in combat? Because what if we get on that battlefield and we can't have a contract like we did in Iraq and Afghanistan?
So if you go to Fort Cavazos right now, you can go visit what they call the hub. A new 92 Golf soldier must go spend, I think it's 6 weeks at the hub. The first thing they do is they baseline them on necessary skill sets of operation of their tactical equipment. The second thing they do is make sure that they are fully proficient as a soldier. And then they layer on meal preparation. They do all the field feeding out of that location. So they basically consolidated not only the management of the 92 Golfs, but the leadership and the training as well, so they can deploy those teams to National Training Center, the Back 40, wherever.
I agree with Chris. So for me, it's like, look, if in the U.S., and people are going to hate this, but in the U.S., if we bid this out and hold these contractors accountable, like an RFP has just been done, where we have an executive chef, a dietitian, just like special operations do, and then when we forward deploy these 92s, when they come back from that deployment, we put them in somewhere like the hub, and we continue to train them. Because if we look at a general's aide or an admiral's aide, and they go to school at Fort Liberty, they get so much more training. I want that for every cook. Every cook deserves that. Food is not just sustainment. Food is always health. And we spend all this money on the H2F system, which is an amazing system, but we give SEAL teams new pools, new gyms that are billions of dollars. But unless we change the nutrition, which is Chris's whole thing here, it doesn't matter what we give them, bullets, beans, because they can't sustain that firefight other than adrenaline.
Let me ask a second critic question, though, real quick. Why do I need a dive facility? Why don't you just give me your basic allowance for substance like you married soldiers get, and I'll go out and buy my own food?
Yeah.
What's
I
the
think
answer to
that's a great question. And look, I will tell you, I am a hard no on just giving all the soldiers their BAS until we could potentially satisfy all the requirements. We're going to drive them away and more towards fast food. If you go to the University of Alabama, Dan, right now, my oldest daughter was a student athlete there. She went to an athlete's dining facility that was loaded with higher quality food. I mean, she ate better than I did. And because she was a student athlete, our soldiers are athletes. And so we have a moral responsibility to treat them as such and feed them as such. Now, look, I love a good cheeseburger, and I want to be able to go get a cheeseburger when I want. The soldiers, we want them to have that same ability to go do that. But day in and day out, when they're training and training hard like we want them to, we need to give them the proper food, caloric intake, the amount of protein, et cetera, et cetera. But we also have to acknowledge that we have to win the soldiers back over.
We do.
Yeah.
Because they're choosing to drive by our dining facilities, and we have to win them back over. Hey, the number one restaurant our soldiers want to eat in, and all the surveys we've done, Chipotle, right? You can make a really healthy burrito, right? So why don't we give them a burrito every freaking day if they want to eat a burrito every day?
A healthy burrito.
That's right, a healthy one.
Yeah.
So, sir, I'm going to go back and continue to be the critic for a minute. And obviously, there's a very clear path on how do we get there, but how do we pay for it? I mean, we're always in a competing environment for resources and funding, and this is going to come at a cost, right? Can we save money and
cost neutral at worst?
Yeah,
cost neutral.
Look, if I'm running a restaurant, and the Army's a big restaurant to me, just multiple of them, right? When I worked for a large casino company, I bought futures. We are the military is the largest purveyor of food in this country. We should be setting the prices on what we're paying. When I bought 50 million pounds of beef a year for 4 casinos, and I said, hey guys, instead of $7.16, I'm going to give you $3.16, but I'm going to commit to this much. It could be a hamburger or ground beef. It could be a flank steak. It could be a filet. It could be a T-bone. Doesn't matter. The beef is the category. There is no reason we can't be dictating those terms. And and I'm not getting into DLA's work or anything they do, but I believe if I run a facility with that executive chef and that nutritionist with the Army guidelines, I think I can save X amount. And I know the number because I've done the maths. I love going into a line and getting food. We don't do that. We have individualized soldiers that go back to their barracks and they eat whatever they eat and they sit alone. I don't want that. I want them to, one thing I was really amazed at when I was in Norway a couple of weeks ago, Marines would come in, 5 foot of snow, -5 degrees, and you would see one Marine sit on a table on his own. And the master guns got up and said, no, you sit with your brothers and sisters. And that's what we need to get back to.
Agreed.
Because we can see if there's something going on with somebody's life, something having family, something with a wife, something with something going on. We can see it. And food has the ability to do that. It's not just food for living. It's food for thought, as it were, right?
When I joined the Army, that's the way it was. Everybody went to the dining facility. The commanders, the soldiers, everybody.
I've dedicated my whole life to this, and I'm really passionate about it. And I'll be at every one of them bases to make sure they're doing what they do so that we can prove that what we said and what we put in that letter or that document is real and attainable.
Well, I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I am 100% behind your methodology. And obviously your task at hand is large and big, but we got to get those soldiers back to our dining facilities. That is the best place for them to eat. I'll tell you, you got a lot of work to do. And I know that you can do it, though. I do. Hey, let's close this out. I know we're running out of time. I could talk to both of you all day long. I want to end with something a little fun here. So what is the absolute best and worst meal you've ever had?
In a dining facility or period?
Well, either one. I'll leave it to you, sir. I'll leave it to you. Yeah, period.
Yeah. I will have to tell you that I don't have a single best meal, but there is nothing better than North Carolina barbecue with a homemade vinegar sauce, some homemade slaw, And then some potato salad, all of which, by the way, I cook for Easter for my my family, my kids, my grandkids, etc. Yeah. That's probably the best. Worst meal, I've had some. Anybody remember the dehydrated pork patties?
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, and I'm going to date myself. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, chicken cacciatore, 3 meals a day, for weeks, because that's all that we could get.
That's amazing.
So I'll stop there.
What about you, Chef?
Oh, I've had some amazing meals. Being a chef, you get invited to all these great places. I think the best, or one of the best meals I've ever had, and you'll laugh at this, as at the Victoria and Albert Hotel in Disneyland. The chef, Chris, I've got to tell you, unbelievable. The worst meal has got to be that one I had with Joe Dunford in Poland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I just got to quickly share my worst meal story. It was 2015. It was Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And I didn't even taste the meal, but it was my worst meal ever. It was the meal that I made when I battled Chef Irvine on stage and lost.
Come on. I knew you were going to say something on it. By the way,
hold on. We already talked about that, Dan. That was on a previous podcast.
I think I won.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's in the topic. It's in the topic.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. We could really keep talking about this, but we really appreciate all the things that you're doing. And we got to have you come back once the 5 locations go live.
First Bragg, first location.
Yeah, we're definitely we're gonna do a follow up on this.
Okay, great. We can come down there.
Hey, why don't we host you at the dining facility of Fort Bragg, and we'll do a follow up.
Okay.
We could do it right there.
Right.
We'll interview
Chef
soldiers.
Irvine and Dan are gonna do push-ups again.
We'll interview soldiers right on the spot.
Yeah,
But he's old now. He can't do them push-ups anymore.
Okay.
That was a challenge,
guys.
by the way.
All right, thanks.
General Dynamics Land Systems Pandur-Shurad is a new 6x6 solution for comprehensive short-range air defense. Featuring Moog's RIP turret and room for robotic system operators under armor, Pandur-Shurad offers superior protected mobility and proven lethality for the Army's light formations.
For this week's chapter spotlight, we'd like to focus on our George Washington chapter, who will be holding a health and fitness fair later this month. To tell you more about it, here's one of the event's organizers.
My name is Mark Riley, and I am the VP for Soldier and NCO programs for the George Washington chapter of AUSA. On June 21st, we'll be hosting the Holistic Health and Fitness Resource Fair, and it will be at the National Museum for the United States Army. And it's going to have 5 different zones. It'll have a resilience zone, a resource zone, a physical fitness zone, family and community zone, and a nutrition zone. So we're trying to bring all of the resources that would be structured around holistic health and fitness to obviously the different compos of the Army, Reserve, National Guard, and active duty, but also our veteran and military community in the DC region. If anyone's interested in finding out more, you can look up ausa.org, or you can look on the Eventbrite link or Eventbrite app, where you can find the exact details. Hooah!
Thanks to Mark and the entire chapter for everything that they do. If you or your chapter would like to be profiled on the show, please email us at podcast@ausa.org. As you already know, it's the Army's 250th birthday. And over the last couple weeks, we've received a number of messages from listeners wanting to join the party and send some greetings. Here are a few of them we'd like to share.
My name is Meg Ryle, and I would like to thank Kirsten Reed for her service. Happy 250th birthday, U.S. Army.
My name's Corinna, and I would like to thank Wes and Lexi for their service at Fort Johnson. Happy birthday, U.S. Army.
Hi, my name is Yolani A. Osorio. Great shout out to all of you servicemen, whomever are currently serving, have served, and continue to serve. Happy birthday, Army, And shout out to our twin boys, Jesus and Herman Diaz, serving currently a station at Fort Belvoir in Virginia.
To all our listeners, thanks for joining us. Army Matters is brought to you by the Association of the United States Army, the U.S. Army's professional association, member-supported, Army-connected. Visit us at ausa.org for more information or to become a member. Your membership helps AUSA continue to carry out its mission, educate, inform, and connect with the total Army, our industry partners, and supporters of a strong national defense. Today's episode was hosted by Lieutenant General Retired Les Smith and SMA Retired Dan Dailey, and anchor hosted by Carrie Barrow-Heckes. Anthony Del Call is the producer and writer, and Andy Bosnack is the supervising sound editor. Ellen Toner is the content editor. Unzinga Curry is the executive producer, and the senior producers are Carrie Barrow-Heckes and LaSharon Duncan. Be sure to subscribe to Army Matters wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. As you know, we love seeing stars in the Army, especially if it comes in the form of a 5-star review. AUSA's Army Matters podcast can also be heard on Reach Across America Radio on Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app with the search of the word Reef. AUSA's Army Matters podcast primary purpose is to entertain. The podcast does not constitute advice or services. While guests are invited to listen, listeners, please note that you're not being provided professional advice from the podcast or the guest. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the views of AUSA. For questions or to provide topic recommendations, email us at podcast@ausa.org. I'm LaSharon Duncan. Hope you have a great Army Day. Hooah!